Ever spent like 6 hours just crawling through traffic to get out of Delhi? I'm talking bumper to bumper, barely moving, the kind of drive that makes you wonder why you even left the
Oh
house.
yeah, that Delhi-Dehradun rap, it's infamous.
It really is.
Mhm.
But what if I told you there's this project, right? And it's aiming to cut that travel time down to like 2.5 hours.
Now that would be a game changer. Sign me up.
Right, and that's what we're diving into today, this Delhi-Dehradun Expressway.
Right.
You're interested in these big infrastructure projects that are really pushing the limits, and this one is fascinating. It's this blend of really ambitious engineering and then trying to be sensitive to the environment. We've got news articles, real estate blogs, even some research on wildlife corridors that all touch on this massive project.
So it's more than just laying down some asphalt.
Way more. It's about rethinking how we connect things, boosting economies, and then figuring out that balance between development and actually protecting the environment.
Right.
Okay, so let's get some basics out of the way. We're talking about a 210-kilometer-long expressway, which is split up into 4 different packages. It also has a price tag that'll make your eyes water. Ours, 13,000 crore.
Whoa.
This thing is designed to handle speeds up to 100 kilometers an hour. Think about it.
Right.
You could have breakfast in Delhi and be sipping chai in the Himalayas in like no time.
That kind of time saving just changes everything for tourism, for businesses, even for like emergency response times.
Hmm.
Getting people and stuff through that kind of terrain that quickly, it's a game changer.
And that's where these 4 packages come into play. Each one tackles a specific challenge and gives us a glimpse into just how massive and complex this whole project is.
Like a puzzle, with each piece fitting into a larger picture.
Exactly. So let's start with package 1, the grand entrance, right? Okay, imagine this. A 12-lane expressway, 12 lanes, starting from Akshardham in Delhi and going all the way to Bagpat in Uttar Pradesh.
Starting at a place like Akshardham is an interesting choice. It's almost like symbolic, this merging of the ancient and the modern.
Yeah, it definitely makes a statement. And it's practical too, giving people in Delhi and all those tourists easy access right away. Now, this first part is mostly about improving what's already there, what they call a brownfield alignment. But don't let that fool you, it's still a huge undertaking. They're doing elevated sections to keep those speeds high, service roads to keep the local traffic flowing smoothly. They're really going all out.
That separation of local and expressway traffic,
Yeah.
that's key. You don't want to cut off local communities, right? This way, everyone wins. Better connections for everyone without messing with people's lives.
Exactly. Okay, so package 2. This is where things get really interesting. It's the Greenfield Marvel, a brand new 118-kilometer stretch right through agricultural land. We're talking a blank slate, and the engineers are getting creative.
A straight shot like that is efficient. But I wonder about those farming communities. Land acquisition can be tricky. Got to make sure people are treated fairly.
Definitely. And while we don't know all the specifics, it sounds like they're including things like vehicle underpasses and footbridges so people can still get around. But you're right, we have to see how this affects those communities in the long run.
Absolutely. Finding that balance is key.
Yeah.
Progress can't come at the cost of people's homes and lives, right?
Oh, exactly. Now, package 3, this one's a bit shorter at 40 kilometers, but just as important. They're taking the existing 4-lane highway and bumping it up to a whopping 10 lanes.
Might not sound as dramatic as a brand new highway, but wow, 10 lanes. The impact for people using that road every day is huge. Less traffic, safer. Those are the changes you feel right away.
Okay, and finally we get to package 4, the final stretch. This is where the Delhi-Dehradun Expressway really shows its commitment to the environment. Picture this. A 19-kilometer stretch, elevated on pillars, creating what some are calling Asia's longest wildlife corridor.
Now this I like. It's not every day you see a project this big putting wildlife first. That's pretty cool.
Right. The idea is that animals can just walk right under the expressway, no problem. They even curved the design around Rajaji National Park to avoid messing with those forests.
Shows you don't always have to choose between progress and nature, right? With some clever design, you can have both. It's possible.
Totally. And that's not all. They're also putting in noise barriers along this section to minimize disruption to the wildlife from traffic. They even have twin tunnels near Dehradun, so it's not an eyesore on the landscape.
It's good to see they're thinking about the future, about the environment, and how to make this last. Of course, the big test is how well it all works once the expressway is open.
100%. And you know what? We should talk about the potential environmental impact and how well these mitigation efforts actually work a bit later.
Thinking about all this, it makes you realize that this expressway isn't just about getting from point A to point B quicker. It's about opening up so many possibilities for the whole region.
Right, it's like this catalyst for growth and change. And speaking of growth, one article mentioned the effect this is all having on real estate. Apparently, luxury homes in Dehradun are now starting at like our 3 crore.
Yeah, improved access always seems to do that, drive up those property values.
Yeah.
And Dehradun has always been a desirable place to live. Nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas with its natural beauty and peaceful atmosphere, it's a sought-after escape from the city.
It makes sense, being able to enjoy that tranquil lifestyle without giving up the convenience of being right near Delhi. No wonder people are willing to shell out the big bucks.
And it's not just luxury places either. The article also talked about brand new towns popping up all along the expressway, construction jobs, new businesses, this whole ripple effect of economic activity.
It's like a mini economy being built right alongside the road. But you touched on something important earlier. Who actually benefits from all this development?
That's the question, isn't it? Are these opportunities available to everyone? Or is the gap between the haves and have-nots just getting bigger? Are the people who've lived here for years being priced out? These are things we really need to think about.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always a good thing for everyone. And speaking of that, we've been talking a lot about the potential upsides, but let's not forget about the potential downsides, specifically the environmental impact. Building such a massive expressway through such sensitive ecological areas is going to raise some eyebrows.
Oh, for sure. You can't just focus on the new road and forget about what might happen to the environment. It's not just about the construction either. It's the long-term effects of all that traffic, noise pollution, habitats getting cut up. Serious stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. They do seem to be taking steps to lessen these impacts, though. We talked about the wildlife corridor, the noise barriers, and trying to avoid those forested areas. They are also putting in things like animal underpasses and overpasses, even special drainage systems to stop water pollution during construction.
All good signs, and it's great they're taking this seriously. But even with the best intentions, even with all the fancy mitigation measures, there's always the risk of something unexpected happening.
You mean like unforeseen consequences?
Exactly. That's why keeping an eye on things is really important. They need to track things like how the wildlife are moving, the air quality, the water quality, the overall health of the ecosystem, and they need to be open about it.
So experts can look at the data and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. And it's not just about watching the data, it's about being ready to adapt and change if something's not working.
Mm.
If those underpasses are just sitting there empty or they're seeing air quality tank, they need to go back to the drawing board.
You've got a point.
Good.
Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about the engineering side of things. Building an elevated highway through the Himalayas is no joke.
Oh, the logistics, the planning. And those twin tunnels near Dehradun aren't just there to look pretty. They help minimize how much they have to dig up the landscape. It's a great example of how being practical and environmentally conscious can work together.
And they're not stopping there. They're using some cutting-edge technology, too. Intelligent transportation systems that monitor traffic in real time, even looking at using recycled plastic in the road itself.
Gotta love the innovation. And it shows a willingness to try new things, to push the limits of what's possible in infrastructure development.
Totally. It strikes me that this expressway isn't just about linking up two cities, it's about connecting India to something bigger.
Now, that is interesting. One article mentioned better access to the border areas, which could be huge for trade and tourism with Nepal. And strategically, this expressway could be a big part of India's Look East policy.
It really makes you think. Something as simple as a road can have such huge consequences. But let's come back to the present. We've got this ambitious project with a completion date of, well, hopefully soon. But what are some of the hurdles they still need to overcome? Let's be real. Big projects like this, there are always delays.
Always. It's like trying to wrangle a bunch of different groups. You got the agencies, the people building it, permits, and then just stuff you can't predict.
Exactly. And we're still waiting on Package 2, that big 118-kilometer stretch, to be finished. Sounds like getting the land has been a bit of a headache.
It's tricky, and it should be, right? You're talking about people's homes, how they make a living, land that's been in their families forever, making sure they're treated fairly. That's got to be a top priority.
Absolutely. And then there's a whole question of all these visitors coming to Dehradun and the surrounding areas. It's great to have this amazing new road, but are they ready for so many more people?
That's the big question, isn't it? Dehradun and those hill stations, they're known for being peaceful, beautiful. Last thing you want is to see them get overrun and messed up by too much tourism.
One of the articles I read mentioned they need eco-friendly places for people to stay, ways to deal with all the trash, and transportation options that can handle more people without hurting the environment even more.
All good steps, for sure. But it's not just about the stuff they build. It's about changing how people think about tourism. Teaching visitors about the local environment, being respectful of the culture, and making sure the money from tourism actually benefits the people who live there. It all matters.
Right, it's about the whole picture. And let's not forget about all that environmental monitoring we discussed. Are they actually going to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to protecting the wildlife and the ecosystem?
Being transparent is so important.
Mhm.
They need to constantly check things like, are the animals moving okay? What's the air and water quality like? Noise levels, all that stuff. Got to track it and then be open about what they're
Yeah.
finding.
And be ready to change course if things aren't going as planned.
Exactly. It's one thing to have a plan. It's another to say, okay, this isn't working. We need to adjust. That flexibility is key.
I like that. Adaptive management. So it seems like the Delhi-Dehradun Expressway, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Exciting, ambitious, with the potential for great things, but also some big question marks. Right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Progress, it's rarely a straight line. There are always compromises, unexpected outcomes, and you constantly have to be paying attention to make sure you're not messing things up in the long run.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive on the Delhi-Dehradun Expressway. Hopefully this has given you a better sense of what this project is all about, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
It's been a fascinating look, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I'm really curious to see how it all unfolds in the coming years.
me too. And who knows, maybe someday we'll be cruising down this expressway ourselves, seeing the impact firsthand.
There you go, road trip.
Exactly. All right, until next time, happy exploring, everyone.